You were asked this question in a way yesterday at American University. It has to do with making a big decision in your life that and you're worried about upsetting your parents. That's a big part of it. And I recently traveled to Korea for the fourth time, lived in Korea for the fourth time in my life. It's crossed my mind that I might want to move there permanently and work there and live there. And initially, that brought up some fear in me. And I've been working on unpacking this fear. Just thinking about it, looking into the future and writing down what excites me about this prospect versus what is making me anxious. And the excitements outweighed the anxieties, but one of them was, just being away from the family, immediately being away from them. So I would still be able to travel back every year and see them. Just knowing that, thinking about what they want for me. I went to graduate school in library and information science. I would probably not be using that degree directly, partially in my work in South Korea. But, maybe they would be viewing me, worrying about their views of me as possibly failing at what I initially set out to do. And maybe there's some feelings in myself for failing to lock that job with that degree that I got here. But I don't know, the prospects of living over there, excite me as well. There's opportunities to do good things over there. And part of me feels like a little sense of shame of abandonment, of fleeing as well. Where if I were to meet a wife and have a child and raise that child in Korea, that child going to school would never need to go through drills of what to do when somebody is opening fire with a gun. That's a reality in America. And I wish it could change here, but I'm a bit pessimistic with my view on this issue here. And that it's not the sole factor, it's not the biggest factor of me thinking about moving over there, but it factors in, it's part of it. And I don't know, that's also feeling a little bit of guilt for being privileged to have this as an option. Whereas I taught at a library in a bad neighborhood in Chicago where people deal with gun violence almost every day there. And, they don't have that option of just picking up and leaving. They don't have the money, the resources to be able to do that. And leaving everything else behind and not being a part of helping there. There's some guilt there as well of the thought of doing that. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty with reconciling these kind of guilty feelings and feeling like I'm being selfish.
아까 짧게 말씀을 드리긴 했는데요.
So I think I spoke shortly about this briefly.
남을 해치는 거하고
harming others
남을 돕는 거하고
and helping others.
이것은 성격이 다릅니다.
Those are two totally different types of behavior.
남을 해치는 거는
Harming others
바로 멈춰야 합니다.
is something you need to stop immediately.
만약에 우리가 남을 해치는 것을 악이라고 표현한다면
If we call that harming others evil,
악은 바로 멈춰야 합니다.
evil is something that you have to stop.
남을 돕는 것을
Helping others,
선이라고 이름 붙인다면
and if we term that good,
선은 선택사항입니다.
good is an option.
해도 되고 안 해도 돼요.
something that you can choose to do or choose not to do.
악은 뭐 해도 되고 안 해도 되고 하는 게 아니라 하면 안 된다 하는 의무사항이에요.
Evil is not something that you can choose or not choose. It's something you cannot do. It's a mandatory baseline requirement.
선은 하면 좋지만은 안 한다고 나쁜 건 아니에요.
Good, it'd be great if you could engage in good, but doesn't make you a bad person just because you choose not to.
악을 안 했다고 좋은 사람은 아니에요.
But at the same time, conversely, just because you don't engage in evil does not make you a good person.
선을 안 했다고 나쁜 사람도 아니에요.
And just because you don't engage in good also does not make you into a bad person.
그렇기 때문에 자기가 선을 행하지 않았다고 나쁜 사람이다. 이건 아니라는 거예요.
So what I'm saying is that just because you did not do good doesn't mean you should view yourself as a bad person.
어머니가 당신을 결혼하기를 원한다.
Say your mother wants you to get married,
내가 결혼을 안 했다.
but I did not get married.
그럼 어머니가 볼 때는 이게 괴로움이에요.
So from your mother's perspective, she suffers.
근데 이게 내가 어머니에게 괴로움을 준 건 아니에요.
But that doesn't mean that you were the cause of her suffering.
어머니가 자기가 원하는 게 안 이루어졌기 때문에 괴로운 거예요.
Your mother suffers because she did not get what she wanted.
근데 내가 어머니 돈을 훔쳤다.
But for example, another example, I stole from my mother.
내가 어머니를 때렸다.
I hit my mother.
근데 이건 내가 어머니를 괴롭힌 거예요.
In that case, I was the cause of her suffering.
이건 멈춰야 해요.
This is something you need to stop
그러나 이거는 나로 인해서 생긴 거고
because I was the cause of that suffering.
내가 결혼을 안 했다고 어머니가 괴로워하는 거는
But the fact that she suffers because I did not marry,
이건 나로 인해서 생긴 게 아니고
that I did not cause that suffering.
어머니의 욕구, 욕망에서 생긴 거예요.
The cause for that suffering is within her because it was her expectation and desire to see me married.
그래서 내가 어머니의 괴로움을 덜어주기 위해서 결혼을 하는 거는 뭐 자기가 선택사항이에요.
So if you marry to satisfy her desire for me, then that's your option, your choice.
그러나 결혼을 안 해서 어머니가 괴롭다고 내가 나쁜 사람은 아니에요.
But just because you don't marry and she suffers doesn't mean you're a bad person.
그러니까 그걸 죄책감을 갖는 것은 자기가 이 원리를 몰라서 그 인식상의 오류 때문에 생겨.
And if you feel guilty over that in that situation, that means that you are experiencing an error in your perception.
내가 한국으로 이사를 가서
Say I move to Korea
어머니를 보지 못함으로 해서
and I don't see my mom.
괴로움이 생긴다면
And if I suffer because of that,
이것은 나의 문제예요.
that's my problem.
보고 싶은 나의 욕망 때문에 생긴 거예요.
Because I want to see her, but I can't. That's why I'm suffering.
내가 한국에 살고 있는데
While I'm living in Korea
어머니가 나를 보고 싶어서
and my mom misses me,
어머니에게 괴로움이 생겼다.
and if my mom suffers because of that,
그것은 어머니의 욕망 때문에 생긴 거예요.
and that's her problem because that rose out of her desire to see you.
내가 어머니에게 괴로움을 준 건 아니에요.
You did not cause her suffering.
물론 내가 어머니 사는 가까이로 와서 어머니가 이게 괴로움이 일어나지 않는다면 그건 좋은 일이에요.
So, if you could move back to nearby where she is and kind of relieve her suffering, I mean, that's a good thing.
그러나 그것을 안 한다고 내가 나쁜 사람은 아니에요.
But just because you don't move back to address her suffering does not make you into a bad person.
만약에 내가 어머니가 괴로워한다고 어머니 욕망대로 내가 다 따라한다고 합시다.
So, say examples, I follow all my mother's desire for me in order to relieve her suffering.
그러면 당신은 자유인이 아니에요.
That means you're not a free person.
당신은 어머니의 노예입니다.
You are slave to your mother's desires.
어머니가 아무리 나를 이렇게 낳고 키워줬고 고마운 사람인 건 맞지만
It is true that your mother birthed you, nurtured you, and you should feel grateful for that.
내가 어머니의 노예는 아니잖아요.
But I'm not my mother's slave.
이게 정리가 돼야 여러분들이 조금 더 이 자유로운 주인이 된 삶을 살 수 있습니다.
You know, this needs to be clear, internalized within you for you to live a life that's freer, that's more autonomous and independent.
내가 성녀가 됐을 때
When I became a Buddhist monk,
어머니가 원하지 않는 일이에요.
it was not something my mother wanted for me,
어머니는 반대해요.
and she opposed it,
괴롭죠.
and she suffered.
그러니까 이것은 자기가 망설이는 거지.
So therefore, it's you who are hesitant,
그 망설임의 핑계를 부모를 삼는 거지.
and you're using your parents as an excuse for your own hesitancy.
본질은 부모는 아닙니다.
The essence of that indecision is not your parents.
자기가 지금 망설이고 있는 거예요.
You are yourself, you're becoming, you're kind of weighing.
이 공부한 거를 살릴까 어떨까.
It's your regrets about whether you want to kind of fulfill the potential of your degree
친구와 가족들의 평가를 고려하고
and kind of, you know, looking to see how, evaluate how well others think of you, your friends and family.
그런 속에서 지금 가고 싶은 것도 있고 이런 것도 고려하고 이렇게 해서 망설이는.
And in midst of that context, you're kind of weighing and pros and cons. You know, that's why it's making you hesitate.
이게 나의 문제임을 자각해야 합니다.
So what I'm saying is that you have to realize that it's your problem
그리고 이 선택은 내가 하는 거고
and know that it's your choice.
결과에 따르는 책임도 내가 져야 됩니다.
And it's that you are the one accountable to your choice.
나는 한국에 가고 싶은데
I want to go to Korea.
만약에 어머니 때문에 여기 있다고 착각을 하면
But if I mistakenly assume that I'm here because of my mother,
살면서 어머니를 미워하게 됩니다.
then you're going to develop this kind of, you know, hatred towards your mom for not allowing or preventing you from you going.
내가 여기 이 삶에서 만족하지 못하면
And you'll never be satisfied with that choice
어머니 때문에 내가 하고 싶은 걸 못했다.
because you're in the back of your mind, you're always thinking that I was not able to do this because of my mom.
그러니까 어머니가 내 삶을 길을 방해한 사람처럼 인식하게 됩니다.
Then you start kind of seeing your mom as an obstacle to what you wanted to do.
어머니는 내 인생을 방해하지 않습니다.
But your mom had nothing to do with that.
어떤 선택을 해도 자기가 해야 합니다.
So whatever choice you make is your choice to make.
그리고 거기에 대한 책임을 져야 합니다.
And be responsible for your choices.
우리가 보통 이렇게 선택을 망설일 때는
So sometimes when we find ourselves hesitating between choices,
어느 것이 더 좋은 거를 몰라서가 아니라
it's not because we don't know which is a better choice.
그 결과에 대해서 책임을 안 지려고
It's that because in the back of our mind we are afraid of being accountable to the choice we're about to make.
나이가 몇이에요?
How old are you?
36.
36살입니다.
그럼 자기 인생에 책임을 질 때가 됐잖아.
And I think it's about time for you to own your life.
이렇게 멀리까지 왔는데
Well, so you've all come so far away,
시간이 너무 짧았나요?
and the time was too short.
얘기를 듣는다고 해결된 건 아니에요.
But nothing was solved for you by me today.
꾸준히 지속해야 합니다.
You have to be on this path consistently.
부처님은 이렇게 말했습니다.
This is what Buddha said.
부지런히 정진하라.
He said, be diligent in your practice,
낙수물이 바위를 뚫듯이.
as if drops of waters can penetrate a rock.
물방울이 떨어져서 바위를 뚫는 거는 불가능하잖아요.
You know, it seems impossible on the surface, right, for a droplet of water to penetrate a rock.
근데 사실은 또 실제로 바위가 뚫리잖아요.
But it actually happens, right? We know it happens.
그렇게 꾸준히 하라는.
That's how consistent you have to be.
너무 쉽게 변화를 갈구하지 말고
You know, don't expect changes to be easy.
우리의 이 괴로움으로부터 자유로워지는 거는
To be free from our suffering
절대로 불가능한 건 아닙니다.
is not impossible.
그러나 그냥 금방 또 될 수 있는 건 아니에요.
but it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
이치를 원리를 이렇게 탁 이해하는 거는 짧은 시간에 될 수 있어요.
You know, you can intellectually understand the principle behind it fairly shortly.
그러나 이 습관 거기로부터 습관이 바뀌어서 일상에서 그걸 경험하는 것은 시간이
But to internalize that change into changing your habit and experiencing that takes time.
왜냐하면 이 까르마가 이게 반응을 하는 거는 이 사고에 의해서 반응하는 게 아니라 이 즉각 반응하기 때문에
Because when karma reacts, it doesn't react through some intellectual rationalizing, it reacts as an instinct.
그래서 이게 시행착오를 거듭하면서 연습을 해요.
That's why you have to go through several mistakes in order to kind of learn from each mistake.
근데 여기 이제 가장 중요한 관점은
And the most important kind of perspective you should hold
이것이 완전히 이루어져서 괴로움이 없는 경지로 가는 게 열반이 아니고
Nirvana is not when you achieve this perfectly and you reach at some state.
그 길로 가고 있는 이 중도 열반이라는 거예요.
So nirvana is the state of you working towards that state.
왜냐하면 지금 괴로움이 일어나지만 일어나고 있다 하더라도
Because if you're suffering right now,
이건 내가 잠깐 놓친 거예요.
you realize that, you know what, it was a momentary lapse in my kind of a attempt to fix my perception.
놓쳤구나 하고 알면 사라지는 거.
So once you realize that you have lapsed, that disappears.
뭐 이게 10,000번 반복된다 하더라도 뭐가 걱정이.
So what if you relapse 10,000 times? What's the problem?
넘어지면 일어나면 되는데.
Just get back up.
그러니까 우리가 농구 선수가 농구 골대에 돈을 연습으로 집어넣을 때
So where, you know, like a basketball player, you know, practicing free throws.
들어가도 주서가 또 집어넣잖아요.
If it doesn't go in, you pick it up and try again.
안 들어가도 또 집어가 또 넣잖아요.
If it goes in, do you try again?
이 연습일 때는
When it's a practice,
들어가고 안 들어가고 이것 갖고 괴롭지 않잖아요.
you know, you don't suffer just because it doesn't go into the basket when you're practicing.
다만 계속 연습할 뿐이지.
You know, the only thing is just continue practicing.
시간이 지나면
And after a while,
처음에는 잘 안 들어가다가
at first your percentage might not be great,
점점 들어가는 확률이 높아져.
but at the end, you might be a good free throw shooter.
그런 것처럼 이렇게 꾸준히 연습을 해 나가면 돼요.
Likewise, all it takes is diligent practice.
어떻게 생각하세요?
What do you think?
그러니까 지금부터 편안해져야 된다.
So that's why you need to be
뭐 안
at
돼도
peace right now.
안 되면 이번 놓쳤네 이러고 그냥 또 하는 거예요.
Because, you know, if it doesn't work out the way you wanted to, so I said, you know what, I missed that.
나도 모르고 화가 벌렁 났다.
So you got angry.
내가 미쳤구나.
I said, oh, I was crazy.
미안해.
I'm sorry.
놓쳐버렸어 이번에.
You know, I missed that.
그러고 또 하면 되잖아요.
And try again.